Hello and welcome. I am Dr. Lisa Holliday LaBeouf with the Louisiana Department of Education Literacy Division, and I will be your guide through these training modules that meet requirements outlined in Bulletin 996 on behavior management and trauma-informed literacy strategies. The purpose of this course is to meet certain requirements outlined in BESI Policy, Bulletin 996, in accordance with Act 438 of the 2021 Louisiana legislative session. Specifically, these modules address the following areas for teacher candidates in grades kindergarten through third: behavior management, trauma-informed principles and practices for the literacy classroom, and other developmentally appropriate supports to ensure that students can effectively access literacy instruction. There are some additional training opportunities that provide more in-depth knowledge around trauma-informed best practices. The Louisiana Department of Health, in partnership with the Child Welfare Training Academy, developed a training on adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs, and trauma-informed best practices for general instruction. That training provides a deeper dive into the topics and may be useful to supplement this course's literacy-focused instructional information. Also, the Louisiana Early Childhood Key training modules feature numerous trainings and resources, many of which touch on trauma-informed practices and high-quality interactions. Our agenda for this course begins with a discussion about the need for this type of training. We will talk about why it is so important and how it can connect specifically to literacy instruction. We will first focus on trauma-informed strategies to support students who have experienced adverse experiences. We will then go into some general behavior management strategies, followed by additional supports that focus on developmentally appropriate practices. This course will conclude with a certificate of completion that can be downloaded, completed, and turned into school administration should credit be required. Contact information will be provided in case there are any lingering questions or additional requests. Let's get started by discussing the need for this type of training. Approximately 2/3 of children in the U.S. under 16 report experiencing at least one traumatic event. Louisiana's students likely exceed this statistic because not only do our students experience the same societal and family traumatic events as the rest of the nation, but we have the added trauma of weather events like hurricanes that devastate parts of our state and uproot our families for undetermined amounts of time. Trauma can affect cognitive development and function, as well as have physiological effects. Traumatic events affect the way students are able to learn, including learning to read and comprehend. One positive teacher-student relationship can help students who have experienced trauma. Relationships matter. Forming a positive connection with a student can overpower the effects of trauma and improve their abilities to learn, socialize, and cope with daily occurrences. As mentioned on the previous slide, traumatic events can impact students' abilities to learn effectively. This includes their ability to learn to read and comprehend. Reading involves a process in the brain called orthographic mapping. That's how the brain naturally takes in information and stores it as words, sentences, and concepts that can later be retrieved for automaticity and accurate reading and comprehension. As you can see by the first triangular image, a typical student's brain development focuses largely on cognition and social-emotional development, and less on having to learn how to regulate emotions and provide basic survival skills and instincts. Survival and regulation are part of natural development, and we do not need to access them as much as other skills that are needed to learn. However, in students who have experienced trauma or adverse experiences, the majority of their brain energy is used on surviving difficult situations and regulating emotional responses, which can result in behavioral changes and challenges. Much less energy is focused on the cognitive skills that are required for typical reading development. Due to this inverted effect, Trauma can greatly impact a student's ability to learn and read because they are more focused on figuring out how to get through their daily challenges and potentially dangerous circumstances. They don't have enough brain power available to prioritize reading and applying learned skills. Armed with that background knowledge of why it is so important to understand and identify the need for trauma-informed care for our students, let's dig in a little deeper to some strategies we can use to support students who have experienced trauma. This module of the course will focus on ways that trauma can impact learning, how teachers and leaders can address trauma in classrooms as well as schools, and then we will share some specific strategies to support literacy instruction and combat the effects of trauma. We will start by defining some of these terms. When we talk about adverse childhood experiences, often abbreviated to ACEs, we are talking about abuse, neglect, and other traumatic experiences during childhood. These experiences directly impact students. Trauma refers to events that are frightening, dangerous, or even life-threatening. Poverty and homelessness are included as traumatic events. Students dealing with poverty and/or homelessness likely experience post-traumatic stress due to traumatic events such as eviction, foreclosure, domestic violence, unstable living environments, or the incarceration of a parent or other family member. Please note that this is not a comprehensive list, but rather a few commonly seen examples. There are certainly other experiences that could be included in these definitions. Reactions to trauma or ACEs can be chronic, meaning that they are continuous and often compounding. They can have direct and indirect impacts on learning that include, but are not limited to, lower academic performance, fatigue and irritability, stress triggers, misbehaviors which can be sudden or ongoing, and a sense of learned hopelessness. These are ways that students display their internal responses, where those regulation and survival skills come into play. This is why so much brain energy is needed in those areas. Teachers may notice a sudden change in students' performance or behavior, or it may be a gradual effect. Students may feel like they are stuck in a cycle of negative experiences and do not have the skills or know-how to get out of it. These impacts, if not addressed, can often lead to that cycle being carried throughout adolescence and adulthood, and even transferred to their own family members or children. In order to teach students who have experienced poverty and have related trauma, teachers must know how to recognize trauma-related behaviors such as depression, anger, inappropriate responses, and difficulty managing emotions or realizing the consequences of their behaviors. Some teachers may interpret students' emotional and social deficits as a lack of respect or manners, but it is more accurate and helpful to understand that these students come to school with a narrower range of appropriate emotional responses than we expect. Because they are using so much of their brain energy to survive and cope, they do not have as much available for developing and sustaining proper social and emotional responses and cues. To create a space of support and acceptance, teachers should find ways to promote equity in the classroom. This means giving each student what they need to feel and be successful. Students have different experiences and reactions, and thus they need different approaches and types of interactions with adults. Tune into what each student needs and help them by supporting a healthy development and facilitating a safe, supportive learning environment. As mentioned earlier in this training, positive relationships are key. It can take time, but developing trusting relationships with students can open the door to all other strategies and efforts. If a teacher cannot connect with a student, find an adult who can and capitalize on that relationship. As discussed on the previous slide, the internal impacts and responses to ACEs and trauma can manifest as misbehaviors. Try not to mislabel survival techniques, coping mechanisms, and regulation efforts as behavior problems. Look past the behavior to try to figure out where it is stemming from. Incorporating multisensory approaches to learning can provide a healthy outlet for students. When able, include creative outlets like art, writing, drawing, or creating to lessons to give students options to express themselves and develop healthier strategies for dealing with scary events or unfamiliar emotions. Within the whole school setting, it is critical to leverage the individuals who are specially trained to deal with the effects of unhealthy experiences like traumatic events and to use existing resources to support students who are struggling with behaviors triggered by trauma. School counselors are able to use specialized skills to teach students healthy coping skills and techniques that can allow them to use more cognitive power for learning and socializing. Mentors can be excellent partners for students. Find someone on campus who can connect with struggling students and provide positive role models. Mentors may be another teacher, a support personnel, or any other adult on campus that may already have or can build a personal relationship with a student. Community groups and resources can help schools support students as well. Find out what organizations are available in your community and what resources they can provide. The beauty of literacy instruction is that there are so many instructional strategies that can lend themselves to supporting students emotionally. Self-expression is easy to do through writing and creating activities. Teachers can also incorporate songs and poems as writing techniques to provide creative outlets for students. Modeling is an integral part of any literacy lesson, so teachers should model appropriate language and styles for students. Graphic organizers are another option for expressive learning. There are a multitude of types of graphic organizers, all with various purposes, that can provide ways for students to share their feelings and thoughts without judgment or exposure if they choose to keep them private. Choosing writing topics that lend themselves to creative writing exercises are great for all learners. Peers can also provide support to students who struggle with social skills. Partner struggling students with a classmate who can nurture them and provide support with assignments as well as social situations. Be mindful of both students and make adjustments as needed. The peer buddy may need a break from the added responsibility once in a while, or a different pairing may work better after some time. Closely observe and monitor interactions to ensure all students are being respected and attended to. Don't forget to keep family members informed of what's going on with the student. Regular check-ins with responsible and empathetic family members can ensure skills continue to be developed and practiced. Bring in members of the community to share stories, testimonies, read-alouds, or other ways of interacting with and engaging students to develop positive relationships and build a network of support. Some general tasks that many students who struggle with behaviors or impacts of trauma enjoy are serving as a door greeter, interacting with peers in positive, constructive ways, and participating in role-playing to teach rules, procedures, and expectations. Most kids thrive on structure. Some key takeaways from this module on trauma-informed strategies are: trauma can impact all students of a child's life, including their ability to read and participate in school activities. There are helpful ways teachers and other school personnel can support children who have experienced trauma. Literacy instruction can also be a tool to combat challenges that students face. The next module focuses on general behavior management strategies and includes some additional ways that literacy instruction can support classroom management practices. In this module, we will talk about how determining the cause of the behavior is important and list some specific literacy instructional strategies. Let's start this module with some definitions too. Behavior is the way a student acts or conducts themselves. Behaviors can be consistent, meaning they are ongoing and steady, or there can be a sudden change in a student's behavior, which may or may not be triggered by an event. When dealing with or managing student behaviors, The approach should involve low intensity, meaning it should be a careful, well thought out, non-confrontational experience. Effective behavior management techniques focus on increasing positive interactions and habits while reducing negative ones. In order to most effectively choose strategies to manage certain behaviors, an important first step is to determine what the root cause of the behavior is. This can be challenging, but there are ways to approach this process. Think back to when the behavior started and track when and where they occur most often. Are there any trends that you notice? Again, it cannot be stressed enough how important family members can be as partners. Talk to a trusted, responsible family member and other teachers or adults who interact with the child to see if they have noticed any changes or trends as well. A pivotal mindset in the behavior management process is to consistently remind yourself that even though misbehaviors may be directed at you, they are most likely not about you. Behaviors usually stem from personal experiences but are taken out on others. When you can't quite put your finger on what may be causing the behaviors, ask the student. Depending on the student's age, use language they can easily understand and see if they can relate to you where the behaviors are stemming from. This may take time and additional conversations, but it will be time well spent if it helps teachers better support students. These reflective questions can help teachers think through interactions with students and ways they can be intentional about building relationships that can provide a safe space for students. Let's take a few moments to think through some of these. If it helps, you can jot down responses to reflect back on. What are the names of the 1, 2, or 3 students about whom you feel strong negative emotions? What does each of these students respond positively to? What makes each of them smile? What motivates them? When do they get excited? When do they show joy? What is their biggest behavioral struggles? What help is each of them asking for through their behaviors? What small thing can you do with each of these students tomorrow or when school starts back to show them that they have a place in your classroom? Which adults have been able to make even a small connection with these students? And can you go to them for help? Some of the instructional strategies listed can be generalized to other content areas as well, but for the purposes of this module, let's focus on the literacy classroom. First and foremost, maintain focus on instruction instead of emotional responses. This connects to the idea that behaviors may be directed at you, but are not about you. So responding with high levels of emotion can amplify behaviors and cause mistrust. By focusing on instructional practices and support, students can learn to adjust better to the safe, supportive environment you are providing. Modeling is one of the most powerful tools teachers possess. Modeling appropriate language and responses can provide a great example for students learning how to regulate their emotions. Language should be positive with a ratio of 5 positive responses to every 1 negative or corrective response. And most importantly, when communicating, remember, it isn't so much about what you say as how you say it. Again, graphic organizers are a useful tool to help students organize thoughts and feelings. Ensure that activities are intentional and meaningful, taking into consideration topics or conversations that may be triggers to students. If a student is triggered, modeling appropriate and empathetic reactions can be helpful. When you need to recognize and respond to behaviors, it is key to remember that students, as well as adults, want to feel heard and valued. Start by identifying what the student really needs. Is it attention, a friendly face, a friend, an area to take a break? Recognize that all students have value and worth. Everyone is good at something. Find what a challenging student is good at and capitalize on that. Understand that students, again, much like adults, cannot effectively learn and retain knowledge if they do not have their basic needs met. Remember that inverted triangle? Help to make sure basic survival skills are met before expecting students to be able to have enough brain power to learn and apply their learning. Be a teammate with the student. Your classroom is a family and a team. Help all students feel like a valuable part of that team. You are in this together. Throughout the process, no matter how challenging, maintain patience and grace. Efforts will go a long way with students, even if they don't show their gratitude right away. Some key takeaways from this module on behavior management are: behavior management includes strategies that can improve student behavior and develop positive relationships. Behaviors often stem from external factors, and grace and patience go a long way. Literacy strategies can provide supports for managing student behaviors. In our third and final module, we will specifically discuss supports that are developmentally appropriate for students and what that means for students who struggle with behaviors. In this module, we will go over some general definitions and guidelines for developmentally appropriate approaches and some more strategies for effective literacy instruction. Let's start by defining what developmentally appropriate means. Learning opportunities and activities that are developmentally appropriate are suitable for a child's age and stage of development. This may look different for different children, even children who are in the same grade. In order to provide effective developmentally appropriate supports, make sure expectations are clearly communicated in student-friendly language. Again, different students may require different levels of communication and language. As stated earlier in this course, students thrive on structure. Establishing routines and procedures for all tasks can help manage behaviors. Have signals or motions for everyday needs, such as bathroom breaks, pencil sharpening, throwing away trash, transitions, turn and talk opportunities, and regaining whole group attention, just to name a few. Rather than doling out punishment for misbehaviors, use them as teaching and learning opportunities to teach effective management and self-regulation strategies. Promote positive behaviors and try not to publicize negative behaviors. This may mean reconsidering your approach to classroom behavior charts and color systems. If you must correct a behavior, try to do it in private. Addressing an individual behavior in front of the whole class can lead to escalation and embarrassment. All of these strategies take repetition and consistency to remain effective. When thinking specifically about literacy instruction, structure is key, and literacy instruction lends itself well to structured lessons and activities. Posting a schedule for students can help them know what to expect and ease anxieties that could escalate into harder to manage behaviors. This does not have to be detailed, but can give students and teachers a list to reference. Routines and procedures for everyday tasks, as well as literacy skills and transitions, can help establish structures to manage behaviors before they start. Foster a community of learning by allowing students to work together when they can. Pair students strategically and set clear expectations and guidelines for activities. All of these strategies contribute to the support of developmentally appropriate learning. Some key takeaways from this module on developmentally appropriate supports include: developmentally appropriate may look different for different students. Focus on positive reinforcement rather than punishment. Literacy instructional strategies can be customized to support students at their developmental stages. As we close out this course, please accept this final statement as an encouragement. While you cannot solve all the problems of your school family of students, you can create an environment in which they feel safe, loved, comfortable, and accepted. On this slide, you will also see some additional terms that you can search on the internet in order to find more targeted strategies for effective, positive, productive behavior management. To signify your completion of this course, you may print and complete this certificate. Check with your school administrator to see if they would like a copy as proof of your completion. Thank you for attending this course. We hope you gained some useful information and strategies to help you support students who suffer from traumatic events and general behavior management concerns. Please reach out to Louisiana Literacy at la.gov if you have any follow-up questions.